Welcome. My name is Dan Mendelevitz, and welcome to Bridging of Ages. We've got another exciting episode today. We are talking about mentoring in today's world. I have a wonderful guest today. Today we're talking about mentoring in today's world, not just mentoring how it's been, but mentoring how it's going to become. And it evolves just like everything else, and we really need to know how to meet really the new workplace needs and dynamics of different ages and different experience levels. And we're just going to take a look at what it's going to look like, how we can bring in our stories, and how each person can move towards this in order to enhance the innovation and productivity of your company and organization, but also to build your people. We want to know why it makes a difference and why this will be the thing that helps drive your innovation in this rapidly changing world. Because as we've said on previous shows, you can't substitute for experience. However, that experience, when it's melded with new and exciting and innovative ideas, becomes extremely powerful. So we want you to be able to really recognize that unique value in yourself. And it really helps you snap back and come back from those disasters or mistakes that happen in everyday life. So my guest today is David Chametzky, and he knows a lot about reinventing himself and finding the right mentorship. And David is a deep message expert. He's a speaker, an author, podcast host, and a producer. A true pathfinder with a mission to uplift lives in every way by empowering individuals and groups day to day. Through his content and his teachings, he brings insight and a unique guiding principle so others can grow and overcome obstacles. Dave Chametzky knows from experience that your story's power is uniquely you. He really comes across with that power of story. Dave knows that sharing your story becomes an important part of your gift to others and to the world you touch. So we're going to talk about how that story is important, how it works with mentorship, and how that sharing can really help you and the people who work for you grow. So after a message from our sponsor, Dave will be joining us as our guest on another episode of Bridging of Ages. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, welcome to Bridging of Ages, talking about mentoring in today's world. My guest today is Dave Chametzky, and I'm looking forward to a wonderful conversation. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, how's it going, Dan? How you doing today?
Good, thank you. Um, I was reading some of your material, and you talk about the power of the person's story
Sure.
and how that really matters and how they can bring it out. I always talk about how experience matters, and that becomes an integral part of your story. And I just wanted to hear from you on how you start with that story and how it becomes so relevant in the work that people do.
Well, your story is how you got there, right? Sometimes you're put in a position. I mean, that's what leadership is being sometimes put in a position that you're not prepared for or you didn't think you were going to lead. So same thing with mentorship, knowing your story. I've sat with so many people going, I don't really have a story. And then you start talking to them and then they're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm the best underwater basket weaver in the world." I'm like, "What?" That's part of your story. Um, so we don't always realize it, and I've fallen into that same place where I didn't realize my expertise until I started talking to other people who didn't experience it or couldn't see it for themselves. And once you do that, that's where your story is, and you start crafting your story to have that aligned message, which becomes so much more powerful.
That's great. I also noticed that you use this term heart message and
Yeah.
just help our audience kind of understand what that is.
Well, the past month is the heart has really been kind of into me. I had a little medical situation where the heart,
Hmm.
I've always called myself a heart-centered person. It's the old phrase wearing your heart on your sleeve. Those type of people, like we'll tell you what it is. I come from New York, so we might tell you a little bit what you need to know, but the truth, not to hurt you, because that's part of mentorship. Also, is telling you the truth that you need to hear, and then you get to choose. Do you want to do something with it or not? I always say I'm not the right flavor for everybody, but knowing your story and telling you some of the truth that you need to hear. I mean, really growing up, part of my story is I wish somebody would have told me some of the truth that they felt. Even my friends, close friends, at one point, I said, "Oh man, I just realized something," and they're like, "Oh yeah, I knew that." I was like, "Oh, why don't you tell me?" I mean, that's what true mentorship is. Is different than friendship, but it can lead to friendship or that special safe space I talk about. When we're in here, sort of like on your show, when we're in here, we feel safe. We can say what needs to be said, as long as it's respectfully. Then we can learn and move forward.
That's wonderful. And, and especially sometimes that's hard in the business world to be able to tell those truths. Um, I know I like to work with that tough love. I like receiving it, and I'm also willing to give it. But I like your idea where you're kind of wrapping it around with their story. So if you were mentoring somebody, how would you help them bring out their story?
Well, first I build up some rapport, right? Nobody wants to tell.
Hmm.
I don't. If I didn't know you, Dan, I wouldn't tell you my story.
Of
And
course.
you have to start there. It all starts with waiting for that window to crack. When I was working in recovery, I used to say, you know, when you're not open to anything else, your window is closed. And when you open it wide open, a lot of great things could happen at it. But at the beginning, a lot of times we just open that window in the crack. Like during the winter, you might need some fresh air, but not might not want to open the window completely. So once that crack is open, there's the opportunity of magic happening. And I just try to figure out ways to get in, and I've been successful just by people who know me. Word of mouth has been great in terms of telling people, what I do, and part of my Uncle Daveness is what I call is just that safe space. I might say some things a little harsher than somebody needs, uh, but they know that we can then talk about it. If I've said something wrong, it becomes a conversation and allows them the permission to, hey, Dave, man, that was a little harsh. Why'd you say that? Or how did you see that? And, it leads to more conversation. And that's what mentorship really is conversations. It's not just sending in a play and telling you, Dan, you better do this, and you'll get the results that I got.
That's wonderful. I really like your concept of really just being honest with them and building that trust. Uh, and it also, I like that you're able to get them to the point where they can also tell it back to you and say, hey, that hurt. Or what do you mean by that? Or something like that. A lot of what we talk about here is the differences in the ages and the um, experience levels.
Sure.
And also, when I've talked about the mentoring, we talk about it being a two-way street because I'm sure you felt this. Whenever I'm in a mentoring situation, if we're not both learning, I don't find it to be a success.
I think that's right. We can learn from everybody. We might have more book smart or just see things differently. That's where as humans we need other people. There's no way around it. We need the human contact, whatever that means. It doesn't always have to be physical. It's just that conversation and bringing us to those different levels. And that's why you need somebody, even a mentee, to be able to speak up and be like, hey, that's not how I see it, and give you a different point of view, right? If we walk in there, I'm the smartest guy in the room and I'm going to tell you what to do. That works for a lot of people, but that doesn't work, at least in my world. I always, want to say I'm smart, but I might not know all the answers. And if I don't know the answers, I'll find the answers. And just a different style. So I had a client one time who asked me, why can't I get this book out? And I told him a little harshly. And he got angry. He goes, we're not going to work anymore together. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm not trying to hurt you. I knew the person for a while, so it wasn't somebody that I didn't know. And
Mhm.
recently he was like, Dave, I still haven't done the book. I go, I know. I'm watching. I go, I'm your friend. He goes, I need Uncle Dave. And we're finishing up his book. So it's really, sometimes we're not ready to get to that level. And sometimes
Mhm.
harshness isn't what we need at that time. I have been guilty of being harsh, and I try to watch what I do. I've learned I'm definitely not the person who I was because I've had mentors and learned from my mentors. And when people feel
Mhm.
comfortable talking to me about the growth and what they need, I become more self-aware. That's a huge task that what a lot of people and coaches don't always do. It's, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm great. I'm wonderful. And then when it really comes to it, it's less than that, and you don't get the results. I've gotten really good results over the years.
That's great. And it sounds like you also understand the differentiation between a coach and a mentor.
Yeah,
Okay. And that's wonderful. Um, so you work with a lot of leaders also in
I do.
organizations and companies. And what I'm curious to, how do you teach them that they need to do this? Because, in our fast-paced world, we don't always have time. And also there's a power differential in those situations. And how do you help them overcome it so they can develop, especially their younger workers?
Well, they have to be open to it. That's the first thing. So, once
Hmm.
they come to me, I assume that they're open to it, and then we have some conversations. And
Hmm.
how I explain it to them is like a rookie, and even though they're not rookie, rookie in football, right? The first when they come
Uh-huh.
to training camp, right? One every year you go to training camp, so that means there's always something to work on. It's more training versus I'm going to teach you something. I'm not going to teach a CEO how to run his company who's been doing it for years. What I might be able to do, well, not what I might, what I am able to do is help them manage the stress and live healthier than they might have been doing, handling those burdens and things like that.
Mhm.
Leadership is not only just showing up, it's how you do it, but how do you manage your life? A lot of people, even entrepreneurs, are talking about, well, I work for myself, I'm my own boss. Well, are you working for your own boss or are you working your business? Two separate things. right? There are plenty of entrepreneurs who work 100-hour weeks, and it's just like a regular job. Just you're paying yourself or not paying yourself. Now with leaders, when I work with corporate executives, I show them how to manage their stress. Going back to that football analogy, I go, when you're a rookie, everything becomes quick, but by the end of the season, the regular stresses and the training that we put into it, the game slows down. The game hasn't slowed
Mhm.
down. If anything, the game speeds up. The players are getting stronger. The world is getting much more difficult in
Sure.
business, right? We're struggling for the dollars. Economy isn't that great right now. And that's the part when I teach people how to reduce some stress and look at things a little bit differently, there's a little power there. And then that little power becomes bigger power. And we get more confident that they start shifting, and they start shifting in a way that they don't have to think about it anymore. Much like when we all started typing, we start typing the picks, and then eventually
Mhm.
we type a little bit quicker and a little quicker by practice. It's all about repetition and getting that muscle memory back.
Well, wonderful. Just wanted to ask you, we're going to take a short break here for one of our sponsors, but before we go, I just wanted to ask you, how you approach teaching the mentoring for people who are different ages and experiences. And when we come back, we'll take a look at that question.
Sure.
We will be right back at Bridging of Ages. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Bridging of Ages with my guest, David Chametzky. And we were just talking about mentoring and utilizing your story that Dave helps people in their organizations and personally. And we were just talking about how we would approach different ages and experiences to help them work into a valuable mentoring situation.
Yeah. So okay, I didn't know. I was waiting for this.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. So everybody's age. So we go about it a little bit differently, right? Some people have more story to it that they need to.
Mhm.
They have those. Hey, this is how I've been doing it for a long time, and I've been pretty successful at it. So we try to look at building off for somebody who has been in the corporate world a lot longer, build off their successes and remind them some things, and then also see where you can fine tune. It's a more of a recalibration, and then a wholesale change, and the constant training around that, the constant working around that, because life will come through us and give us challenges all over. But a
Mhm.
younger person might not have those experiences yet, and I say yet. Yet's a really powerful word. It just
Mhm.
because that means they aspire to have that, and really what you have to do is look at those things and being able to push it out differently. With the younger person, they might have all these different ideas. They are growing up in a different world than I grew up, but
Mhm.
understanding their needs are really the same. They just might come at it a little differently. And the work environment is different, right? There might be some more blended scenarios. You might not be in the office as much, and there's advantages to both. And not every boss is the same. So when you're working with a young person, you want to see that. And even with older people who might not be the CEO, they might be, mid-level executives who figure out how to manage up and down. And also, corporate America is really challenging right now. They really, they do push out. They don't say that officially as a program, but the older person, and then it becomes that much more difficult. I mean, like I've been at, I got my golden handshake 2.5 years ago, and I'm watching the jobs I applied for 2 years ago are coming back through LinkedIn. I'm like watching those jobs again. I'm like, man, if you would have just had me, you would have had no problem. But it's all those things that the corporate mentality changes, and you have to kind of flow with it. So as we go through that, there's lots of stages of. I mean, you also transitioned out of a long time corporate career, and
Right.
so what we do is there's a lot of different aspects of all of that to be able to find your story, how you align with it, how you manage it. It's not always easy, and there's going to be some bad days along those that to happen, and know that. And then I provide that safe space, so that way I could help them through it, either through my own stories or hearing their stories. A lot of us just want to be heard, and once we can hear our clients and our people, we get to learn something more. Again, that's why I enjoy working with younger executives, because I want to learn. The things that I don't know, but the only
Mhm.
way to do that is by having my window open and share, learning from people as well.
Yeah, well, I love that. I love that part that you're open to that learning. You want to learn from them. That you help them find their story. Also, I think sometimes when we're kind of in the heat of battle, we forget about what it was like when we first did something. That beginner's mind,
Yep.
and somebody who's just starting out doesn't even necessarily know the right questions to ask, much less how to do it. And I like how you're helping to guide leaders to understand that, not only to take care of themselves, which is very important, which you emphasized earlier, but how do they help their people along? And the pressures of business now are enormous
Sure.
on all levels, whether you're just your own entrepreneur, but we don't do it alone. We don't do anything alone. We're very communal animals. And, you would talk to that. I just wanted to circle back about the story and how important that is, and if you could just talk a little bit to that and how you really teach people the power of their own story.
Well, the story is what it is, right? What we do. That's the easy thing to happen, right? I got up in the morning, I brushed my teeth, I put my shirt on, right arm first, left arm second, right? That's the easy part of the story. Um, but the real hard part is to know how it applies and how it feels for me and how I manage the rest of my day. And the same thing goes with
Mhm.
our stories, is not only the story that happened to us, but how it affects us. Once I can recognize how some of the stories, or the stories we tell ourselves, this always happens to me. I always, end up here. I always this.
Mhm.
It's a story that sometimes we tell ourselves, and that's where we look on that fine tuning or recalibration that I talk about. Is, well, what does that story mean to you? You know, does it mean to you that you had to be the leader because you weren't recognized earlier in life? For me, as a speaker, I was talking recently about I was once made fun of by a teacher and my entire class in sixth grade, and I didn't realize until recently. You don't always put those things together. Is that now when I
Mhm.
speak, I don't have that little boy in my head going, "Oh, you can't do that. You're going to say the word statistics wrong. You're going to say a whole bunch of other things." I'm just like, man, let's go do it. But you have to go work to get to that level, and you might not realize the story you're telling yourself. I can't. And that's why I use the word "yet" when I used it earlier. So now
Mhm.
I say I haven't done that yet. That's a promise to myself. Yet becomes a promise to myself that I'm going to find the way to do it. And if at some point I change my direction, that's okay. But knowing that story, knowing why we use our story, my stories, I sometimes feel guilty. I tell my stories, and there some of them are fun, some are less fun, but there's
Hmm.
a learning lesson. I don't want you to just hear my story, or I don't want your story to only be entertainment. I don't want to hear Dan's story. Well, Dan did this, Dan did that. That's great. That's entertainment. But what can I learn from Dan's story?
Ah, okay.
And that's really what I could do to apply it differently, right? One of the things I talk about is it's an old reference, but Pete Sampras. Pete Sampras was the number one tennis player in the world many years ago. For those
Right,
who
I
know,
remember. Yeah.
but when he was number one, he asked his coach, "How can he get better?" And and the conversation went, well, you're already number one. We don't, there is no number after one, right? You're number one, but it's also staying on top of that number one. It's also
Mhm.
the forethought of thinking of what do I have to give up to get better? Is there anything I can do to be better? I mean, Tiger Woods, was notorious for saying, he would throw out a bucket of balls and just throw them on a golf course and hit
Mhm.
every ball where they landed, no matter where they landed. So when he got into the game, right, that muscle memory, when you got into the
Sure.
game, you kind of did it, and that's what your story is understanding the lesson, because it's not only that something bad happened to you and you figured out how to rise. How can you teach? It goes back to that mentoring. How can I use my story to rise or inspire somebody so that way they can go to the front of the class a little bit quicker, because they don't have to go through all the pain. We have to go through some pain in life. That's just how life is. But learning that really becomes powerful when you can give a lesson and help somebody learn through your story.
Well, thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation. I love the emphasis on the story and really how that ties into mentoring in today's world. You know,
Well, thank you.
people have always told stories over the thousands of years, and they're one of the most powerful things that humans have with each other. And I thank you for today's conversation. My guest today has been Dave Chametzky, and we look forward to in the future. We'll hopefully be talking again. And thank you. And this is Bridging of Ages. Welcome back. This is another episode of Bridging of Ages. My name is Dan Mendelevitz. We've been talking today about mentoring in today's world. My guest today has been Dave Chametzky, and I want to thank you, Dave, for being with us. Uh, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the action items that you can move forward with that came from our wonderful conversation today. Let's look at some of the things that you can do moving forward. Action item number one, set up mentoring as a conversation. As Dave talked about, that conversation is vital. It really has to be a two-way street. If your mentoring isn't going both ways, you're not both learning, and it's really not as successful as it could be. You can't just talk down to the person that you're mentoring. You have to have that mutual respect. Dave talked about having that trust, being able to give somebody the tough love. So if you set it up as a conversation, it really has a much better chance of working and being successful. Action item 2, remove age barriers to mentoring. So don't just think about, oh, the older person gets to mentor the younger person. Think about it can go both ways. You can have the younger person, less experienced person, also mentoring the older person, more experienced person, because the experiences are different. People grow up in a different environment. You have the wonderful opportunity to meld those two sets of experience. So if you teach the mentor and the mentee, like going back to the first action item, it really becomes a conversation. Action item 3, train your leadership. Leadership really has to buy into this in order to create mentoring in today's world. Without that leadership training and buy-in, it's not going to succeed. We all get extremely busy. We're working hard. There's a lot of pressures in today's world, in the business world, whether you're a small company or a very large one. However, if we don't take the time to train your leadership and make sure that they make time and that they're given the assignments to the people and making sure that time is officially carved out for that mentoring, it's going to be difficult to succeed. And the tip of the day today is, without stories, mentoring cannot flourish. Dave talked about the importance of your story and bringing that out, and not just looking at the surface part of that, but deep down, what is your real story? People have been telling stories to each other from the beginning of time. And stories are incredibly powerful. And when you understand your own story, mentoring can really flourish. And you can help the person that you are mentoring understand their story. So thank you again for coming to another episode of Bridging of Ages. My name is Dan Mendelevitz. Thank you again, Dave Chametzky, for being a wonderful guest today and all the insights that you brought to us. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Invest in brain power, your brilliance.